A few days ago, I want you all to know that we are fighting the fake news. It's fake, phony, fake.
So you've seen a mental deterioration in Trump supporters when trying to use logic in connecting their theories. What you see in the Trump supporters is they're closed off to any information that might be contrary to how they feel. This is what you're witnessing, and is the effect of you allowing someone to dictate when and where you receive your information from, or allowing someone else to tell you not to listen to various forms of media because they're lies. But you would not be able to dictate or differentiate who is lying to you if you close off the means in which you receive information.
I first shared testimony from Trump's own acting attorney general dismissing Trump's claims of voter fraud.
I told him that the stuff that his people were shoveling out to the public was bullshit.
Like I said, you just can't be up 300,000 votes and then lose.
No, but that's Trump's attorney general. Does that sway you at all?
He's turned on him. He's been paid by somebody to shut his mouth.
Everybody knows that. Let's be clear, this man don't understand the simple process of how election goes. You have what is called mail-in ballots, and then you got the day of voting ballots. So what Republicans understood was that Democrats would do well with the mail-in ballots. So Trump went on a mission to break up the U.S. Postal Service and slow down the mail. And also, states like Pennsylvania had laws passed so that they could not start counting the votes until after a certain time on voting day for the mail-in ballots. This allowed Trump to be ahead, and when the mail-in ballots happened, that's how Trump went down in votes. See, if he had done the basic research, he could have easily contested this theory. But he chose not to, or he's unable to, because Donald Trump create the circumference of his knowledge.
1,303 of the Trump administration, 81 days to go until our presidential election. Today, the nation was warned about a new potential threat to the election, but not from any kind of foreign interference, though it's there. This comes from the U.S. Postal Service, which, right on time, after efforts to weaken it, is now warning states there may not be enough time for the ballots to be requested, completed, and returned before November 3rd. That's the hoped-for outcome when you set out to cripple the post office. NBC News has confirmed states from coast to coast have received warning letters from the Post Office General Counsel. Washington Post reporting the letters were sent to at least 46 states. That's a lot. This as Trump ramps up his effort to cast doubt on the integrity and legitimacy of mail-in voting, which he falsely and repeatedly claims is rife with fraud while
A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people.
refusing to approve the emergency funding that the post office needs. Those extra funds are part of that relief bill Congress and the White House can't agree on. Congress skipped town for a 26-day summer break because they need their rest. Today, Trump was asked what would convince him to release the funds.
If the Democrats were to give you some of what you want, would you be willing to accept the $25 billion for the Postal Service, including the $3.5 billion to
Sure,
handle
they give us
voting?
what we want. And it's not what I want, it's what the American people want. I've directed the Secretary of the Treasury to get ready and send direct payments, $3,400 for a family of four to all Americans. Democrats are holding this up. I'm waiting for the Democrats to approve it.
Why not just sit down with Democrats personally and cut a deal?
Because they want $1 trillion to go to their friends doing a bad job running certain cities and states that are doing very badly.
And it went on like that. Trump and his newly appointed Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, a Trump megadonor with no prior experience, appear to be trying to retrofit the post office in what critics suspect is more like an effort to win Trump the election during a pandemic. NBC News has obtained an internal U.S. Postal Service document revealing plans nothing short of removing 671 high-volume mail processing machines from postal facilities around our country. The agency told NBC News in a statement these are part of normal business adjustments. We also learned that DeJoy has written a memo to post office staff admitting that recent cutbacks and restructuring has resulted in, quote, unintended consequences that impacted our overall service levels. Although he has said the agency will be able to handle the demand of the ballots and the election. Tonight, NBC News reporting the Postal Service Inspector General is, quote, now reviewing DeJoy's policies as well as whether he violated any federal ethics rules. But don't forget, in previous cases, Trump has merely fired the inspectors general. And in a big reversal tonight, the agency is halting plans to remove more of those blue mailbox collection boxes that we've all grown up with from locations around the country until Election Day, after they already removed a good number of mail collection boxes across our country. Democrats Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer put out a joint statement earlier today calling the president's handling of the post office an abuse of power. They're demanding information from the Postmaster General. The problem is joint statements in plain English aren't going to cut it with 81 days to go before an election and Congress on a summer vacation. Here is what Congressman Jim Clyburn, Senator Joe Manchin, both Democrats, said earlier on this network.
If they allow this to happen from the top down, from Washington down, to where this election and basically the people believe and lose confidence and faith, and you don't have the support of the public, I'll guarantee you we'll lose our postal service as we know it. And I'm not going to let that happen.
Forget about political parties. Let's think about preserving this democracy. It's the best thing going on earth, but like every other big government, every other good government, all the way back to Rome, this too can fall.
The Associated Press reporting Republican Senator Mitt Romney also warned that attacking mail voting threatens our democracy. And there was this from the new Democratic vice presidential candidate, Kamala Harris.
Why don't they want us to vote? Why are they creating obstacles to us voting? Well, the answer is because when we vote, things change. When we vote, things get better. When we vote, we address the disparities we've been talking about.
In 2020, there are a handful of states that can't process mail-in ballots till Election Day, and two of them, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, are key battleground states.
Some states don't start counting their vote-by-mail ballots until the day after the election. So that means we could be in for a long election count with a lot of vote-by-mail ballots in states that aren't used to them.
Stephanie Liebergen, Newsy, Miami.
Let's be clear, 2020, we were just coming out of the corona pandemic, or we were still in the corona pandemic where people couldn't be next to each other. And therefore, responsible states made mail-in ballots more accessible. However, Republican ran states made mail-in ballots a lot more difficult. because if they open voting for more people, they know that that would lead to a greater Democratic turnout versus the Republican turnout. It is clear, it's fact and science that Republicans win in small counties, but when in large cities, they do not win the majority vote. And even when you're talking about presidential, the last president to win the majority vote has been a while. So the Republicans understood that opening up democracy for so many people to be able to vote through mail-in would set them back. So they went through great length to hinder the vote by denying names from mail-in voting lists, dropping people from registries. They went through a lot of tactics in order to deny the American people democracy. All these things can be looked into. So for someone to deny this or to be closed off to this type of information, you have to understand they have an inability to connect logic with their theory.
When do states start counting mail-in ballots?
Some states, they start determining voter eligibility for those absentee ballots as they're received, as long as 4 weeks before Election Day.
Maryland is a state that normally can't process mail-in ballots till the day after the election. But because of the pandemic, officials were allowed to start processing those ballots on October 1st. California also changed the rules for 2020. The state is automatically mailing ballots to all registered voters, and processing started 29 days before November 3rd.
Those states that have moved to no excuse vote by mail, or certainly all vote by mail, have tended to adopt procedures that allow for more speedy review and counting of absentee votes, precisely to avoid excessive delay.
Offline since August 14th. 6 sort mail, the other does flat stuff like magazines. The distribution center serves at least half of Oregon and all of Southwest Washington. The removal of these machines is concerning to postal workers.
It's discouraging. The main reason it's discouraging is that we, as the letter carriers, we weren't made aware of it happening until after it came out in the news.
Willie Groeschel is the president of the Oregon State Association of Letter Carriers. He says he doesn't quite know the impact the removal of these machines will have while business is slower in the summer, but it will pick up in November.
If there's not as much equipment to process mail, is that going to potentially cause a situation where the processing and distribution of the mail to us as the carriers is delayed simply because there's not enough equipment? And we, like everybody else, we don't know for sure.
The USPS is a public service older than the country it serves. There's been a push recently during the pandemic to move to universal mail-in voting for this November election. Oregon is one of a handful of states that completely votes by mail. And in the May election, just over 50% of voters mailed in their vote versus dropping it off at a ballot box. President Trump has stated publicly he's against any sort of universal mail-in voting.
Universal is going to be a disaster, the likes of which our country has never seen. It'll end up being a rigged election, or they will never come out with an outcome.
Postmaster General Louis DeJoy said he would halt the removal of sorting machines and blue mailboxes until after the election. Oregon Senator Ron Wyden says he doesn't buy it.
It is hard to take that seriously when you hear from your own folks in your own hometown about how 7 mail sorting machines are being dismantled. And with Donald Trump, you have to watch what he actually does, not what he says.
He could have easily disproven his argument if he had not allowed Donald Trump to decide where he receives his information from. But he will always be led like a puppet or a zombie because he allowing someone else to create the circumference in which he gathers his information from. And this is what all of the Trump supporters. And just to give an example of what I was saying, somebody tuned into my page stating, one of them Trump supporters, you should stop watching a lot of CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and start watching clips of Donald Trump on YouTube. You will know a person's heart when you start doing your research on them. This is what a white Trump supporter contacted me on my YouTube page and said, which you don't even have a right speaking on my page. It's called Unapologetically Black, ADOS. I'm speaking to black people. Shut up, stay in your place sometimes.